right, so you want to talk about AI chips, huh? Those tiny things powering all the big AI breakthroughs these days.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
It is. And we're diving deep on a company called Cerebras Systems today.
Good one to deep dive on. They're doing some really interesting things.
Yeah, and we've got this in-depth report from Contrary Research to help us out. But before we get too far, let me just say, we're all about the tech here, not investment advice, all right?
Of course, always good to have that disclaimer, though it is worth noting that Contrary Research is an investment firm, so their analysis is usually pretty insightful, let's say.
Good point. So, listeners, you've got these massive data centers crunching insane amounts of data, all fueled by AI. And right at the heart of it all, those chips.
And Cerebras, they're kind of doing things their own way.
That's an understatement. Imagine cracking open your laptop one day and you see a chip the size of a dinner plate. That's Cerebras.
It's pretty wild to picture.
Wild. So walk us through this. Why is bigger better in the world of AI chips?
So picture this. You've got a traditional computer chip, lots of little components all packed together. Data has to zip back and forth between them. It's like a busy city with traffic jams slowing everything down.
Okay, I'm with you.
Now imagine Cerebras as a skyscraper. Everything's close at hand, right there in that one giant structure. That's the key here. Cerebras puts everything right on the chip, processing, memory, the whole 9 yards. And because it's all so close together, data can move around insanely fast.
So speed is everything?
Pretty much. AI is all about crunching through massive amounts of data, and the faster you can do that, the better.
Makes sense. I read that this whole thing started with a group of engineers from a company called C-Micro, right?
Yeah, a bunch of them got back together, had a whiteboard, had a dream. Kind of like a classic garage startup story.
And their goal was to build something groundbreaking enough to end up in a museum.
You got it. They wanted to be in the Computer History Museum, and you know what? They did it. Their chip's on display there right now.
That's amazing. I mean, you've got to have some serious ambition to pull that off.
Absolutely. But it wasn't just ambition. These guys, they were really dedicated to changing the game, disrupting the status quo, which, I mean, think about it. You ever been in a job where you're just like, there's got to be a better way to do this?
All the time.
That's what they tapped into.
I love that. But I do have one more question. I imagine actually manufacturing something that big, it can't be easy. What happens if there's like a tiny little flaw on the chip?
That's the thing. With traditional chips, one tiny flaw can be a huge problem. But Cerebras, they found a really clever way around that.
Oh, yeah.
They designed their system to actually work around potential defects. It's a technique they borrowed from how memory chips are made. And it's a total game changer.
So they embrace the flaws, kind of like work with them instead of against them.
Exactly. It's pretty brilliant when you think about it.
It is. And it kind of makes them seem a little more human, you know. But anyway, I'm really curious to dig into whether this radical approach actually works in the real world. So big chips, big dreams, but does it actually work?
Let me tell you, the report is jam-packed with examples of Cerebras just blowing the competition out of the water, performance-wise.
All right, well, don't leave us hanging. What are we talking about? What kind of examples?
So one that really jumped out was their work with cancer research. They're talking about those super complex simulations, trying to understand how tumors grow and spread, the kind of stuff that takes forever.
Right.
Well, Cerebras' system was able to run those simulations 300 times faster than traditional setups.
Wait, 300 times? Seriously?
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
But what does that actually mean for, like, the average person?
It means treatments, potentially life-saving treatments, could be developed so much faster. Like, imagine testing thousands of potential drug compounds, but you're doing it virtually in a computer. You could pinpoint the most promising ones in a matter of days, maybe weeks, instead of years. That's the kind of acceleration we're talking about.
Wow, that's incredible. So it's not just speed for speed's sake. It's about the real-world impact, right? The breakthroughs.
Exactly. And it's not just limited to medicine. The report also mentioned some really impressive stuff in fluid dynamics, which, if you think about it, that's key for a ton of different fields.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, optimizing energy production, modeling climate change, stuff like that.
Okay, so big picture stuff.
Exactly. And what really struck me is that Cerebras isn't just, like, tackling problems we already knew how to solve. They're taking on the stuff that even supercomputers struggled with before.
So they're pushing the boundaries of what's even possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so this is all very impressive. But there was something else I wanted to ask you about. The report also mentioned something called inference. What is that?
It sounds kind of complex, but it's actually pretty straightforward. So think of it like this. Training an AI model is like teaching someone to ride a bike. You need a controlled environment, lots of practice, maybe a few scrapes and bruises along the way.
Right. Got it.
Inference is what happens when they can finally ride that bike on their own, out in the real world. They're taking what they've learned and applying it to new situations.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does Cerebras fit into this whole bike riding analogy?
They've basically built a bike that can go 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye. What I mean is, Cerebras claims their system is about 20 times faster than the competition when it comes to running these inference tasks. And get this, all that at a fraction of the cost.
Okay, so they're like the Tesla of AI chips. Fast, efficient, probably turning some heads in the industry.
That's one way to put it. And they've even got the big names talking. The report mentioned that even Andrew Ng, one of the godfathers of AI, he's impressed by what Cerebras is doing.
Okay, so they've got the tech, the speed, the efficiency, even the endorsements. You'd think they'd be unstoppable, but then there's this one tiny detail.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. The 800-pound gorilla in the room.
NVIDIA. They're like everywhere you look in the AI world, right? How can anyone even compete with that?
Yeah, it's a David versus Goliath situation, for sure. But remember, David, he had that slingshot. Cerebras has got a few tricks up their sleeve, too.
Okay, so indulge me. What's their slingshot? What do they have that can shake things up?
So one of the biggest hurdles is this thing called pseudo. Basically, it's NVIDIA's software platform for their chips. And it's everywhere. Like the industry standard, everyone uses it.
So even if Cerebras has a faster chip, people might be hesitant to switch because they're just so used to NVIDIA's system.
It's exactly like that. Imagine trying to get everyone to switch to a new type of phone charger, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's better, faster, whatever, just the hassle of changing, it's a tough sell.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm still clinging to my old headphones with the headphone jack. The ones everybody else got rid of years ago.
Right. But there's a glimmer of hope for Cerebras here. The report mentioned these open source alternatives to Pseudo that are gaining traction.
Open source meaning?
Meaning they're built by the community, not tied to one specific company. Anyone can use them, contribute to them.
So Cerebras could tap into that.
They already are. Cerebras has been making sure that their hardware works really well with these open source tools. It's smart, makes it easier for developers to try them out.
Lowering that barrier to entry.
Exactly. And speaking of lowering barriers, Cerebras has also gone all in on this thing called PyTorch. It's a super popular open source machine learning framework.
So they're not trying to reinvent the wheel, more like working within the existing ecosystem.
Precisely. Meeting developers where they are, not trying to drag them kicking and screaming into a whole new system.
Makes sense.
Uh-huh.
But it's not just about NVIDIA, right? The report mentioned a bunch of other companies jumping into the AI chip game.
Oh yeah, it's a crowded field. Total gold rush happening right now.
Which, in a way, kind of validates what Cerebras is doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if everybody and their cousin is trying to get in on the action.
Exactly. There must be something big there.
But on the other hand, that's a lot of competition.
No doubt. A lot of really smart people gunning for that top spot. And the report, it didn't sugarcoat things. There are some big challenges ahead.
Like what? Fill us in.
Well, you got to think about the whole geopolitical landscape. We touched on Taiwan before, right? Most of these advanced chips, they're made by this one company, TSMC, based in Taiwan.
Right.
Any instability there, and the whole industry could be in trouble.
So bring thought. What else?
Then there's the energy consumption issue. These AI systems, they're power hungry, like really power hungry. So as this technology grows, that's a whole other challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of ironic. We're developing AI to solve these huge problems, but then powering those AIs could create a whole new set of problems.
It's a balancing act, that's for sure. Oh, and one more thing. Remember how we were talking about Cerebras going big with their dinner plate-sized chip?
Yeah.
Well, there's this whole other trend happening right now where people are moving towards smaller, more specialized AI models.
Interesting.
So Cerebras is betting big on big, but what if the future is actually smaller?
A lot of what ifs in this business, huh?
That's the name of the game, right?
So where does that leave us? What's the takeaway here?
I think what we're seeing with Cerebras is a company that's taking a chance. They're betting on a future where bigger is better in the AI world. And if they're right, the possibilities are huge. We could be talking about cures for diseases, solutions to climate change, stuff we can barely even imagine right now.
But if they're wrong?
Well, that's how innovation works, right? You take risks, you try new things, sometimes you miss the mark. But the journey, the attempt, it's all part of the process.
It's all part of the deep dive. That's it for us today, everyone. Thanks for listening.